It was the silence that people remembered most. Before the screams, before the roar of collapsing masonry that sounded like 1,000 cannons firing at once, and before the sky turned black with smoke, there was a heavy, unnatural stillness. It was 5:11 a.m. on April 18, 1906. The fog, thick and wet, clung to the gas lamps of San Francisco, a city that stood as the crown jewel of the American West. In the livery stables, horses stamped nervously, their ears pinned back, sensing a vibration in the bedrock that no human could yet feel. The city was asleep, unaware that deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, along a 296-mile scar in the earth known as the San Andreas Fault, two massive tectonic plates had been locked in a wrestling match for centuries. In exactly 1 minute, the rock would snap. What followed would not just be a disaster, it would be the first great American apocalypse captured in photography, a tragedy of errors, heroism, and the bizarre twist of fate that saw a city survive the shaking only to die by the fire. The first jolt. Officer Jesse Cook was walking his beat near the produce market on Washington Street. He was a veteran cop, used to the rough and tumble nature of the Barbary Coast, but he wasn't ready for the street to liquefy. At 5:12 a.m., the initial foreshock hit. It was a sharp, jarring shunt like a train coupling. Windows rattled. Cook paused, looking down the street. Then came the pause, a deceptive breath of calm. 20 seconds later, the violence arrived. It wasn't a shake, it was a convulsion. The ground rose and fell in visible waves, resembling the ocean swell. Cook watched in horror as the cobblestones in front of him ripped apart. The sound was deafening, a mixture of deep, guttural grinding from the earth and the high-pitched shriek of tearing metal and shattering glass. Across the city, the luxurious Palace Hotel, where the world's greatest opera singer, Enrico Caruso, was sleeping, began to sway like a pendulum. Caruso, who had performed Carmen the night before to a sold-out crowd, woke up thinking the world was ending. He ran to the window and saw chimneys snapping off rooftops and crushing onto the streets below, crushing carriages and early automobiles alike. The shaking lasted for nearly a minute, an eternity in geological terms. When it finally stopped, a ghostly silence returned, instantly broken by the wail of sirens and the screams of the trapped. The city of ruin. San Francisco had been battered, but it was not yet dead. Many buildings, constructed with flexible wood frames, had ridden out the waves. The steel-framed skyscrapers, a new invention, had surprisingly held firm. But the earthquake had a second, deadlier weapon. Beneath the streets, the iron water mains that carried the city's lifeblood had been twisted and snapped like dry twigs. Simultaneously, gas lines ruptured, hissing invisible, flammable death into the basements of collapsed wooden houses. At 311 Hayes Street, a woman prepared breakfast on a wood-fired stove. The chimney above her had collapsed during the quake, blocking the flue. When she lit the fire to cook ham and eggs, the sparks had nowhere to go but into the walls. This seemingly small domestic accident started what was known as the ham and eggs fire. It was one of 50 fires that ignited within minutes of the quake. The fire department roared into action. Chief Dennis Sullivan, a brilliant strategist who had predicted this exact scenario years ago, was the city's best hope. He had warned the city council that the water mains were vulnerable. He had a plan, but fate is cruel. During the initial quake, the dome of the California Hotel next to the fire station had collapsed, crashing through the roof of the firehouse. Chief Sullivan was crushed in his bed. He fell into a coma and died without ever regaining consciousness. The city was burning, the water was gone, and the only man who knew how to save San Francisco was dead.
The General and the Dynamite. With the police overwhelmed and the fire chief gone, Brigadier General Frederick Funston, a man of action who happened to live in the city, took command. Without waiting for orders from Washington, D.C., he marched U.S. Army troops from the Presidio into the city. It was a decision that would save thousands of lives. and inadvertently destroy thousands of homes. Funston looked at the inferno sweeping toward the wealthy districts. He realized water was useless. The hydrants were dry. He decided on a desperate tactic: starve the fire. He ordered his troops to create firebreaks. If they could blow up buildings in the fire's path, the flames would have no fuel to jump across. It was a sound military strategy, but the execution was flawed. The soldiers used black powder and dynamite. In the hands of inexperienced men, the explosives didn't just flatten buildings, they turned them into shrapnel and kindling. Worse, the black powder often ignited new fires. Residents watched in disbelief as soldiers blew up their pristine homes that hadn't even been touched by the flames yet, in a frantic attempt to stop the wall of fire. In many cases, the explosions simply spread the embers further. The Golden Gate Rescue. By the second day, the sky over San Francisco was a bruised purple and black, visible from ships 100 miles out at sea. The heat was so intense, it created its own weather system, sucking oxygen out of the air. On the waterfront, a different kind of drama was unfolding. The USS Chicago and other Navy vessels began the largest maritime evacuation in history, until Dunkirk decades later. Ferries, tugboats, and yachts formed a chaotic flotilla. Thousands of refugees, clutching bird cages, sewing machines, and paintings, crowded the wharves. The Navy sailors, faces blackened by soot, worked tirelessly. They weren't just transporting people, they were saving the city's history. A group of quick-thinking citizens and sailors ran into the appraiser's building and the U.S. Mint. The Mint held 1/3 of the nation's gold reserves, millions of dollars in bullion. If the Mint grew too hot, the gold would melt, or worse, the building would be looted in the chaos. A handful of employees and soldiers barricaded themselves inside the granite fortress of the Mint. For 7 hours, they fought the fire with a single 1-inch hose and buckets of sludge, while the windows melted and the stone walls grew too hot to touch. They saved the gold, preventing a national economic collapse on top of the physical disaster. The aftermath, a phoenix from the ash. After 3 days, the fires finally died down, largely because there was nothing left to burn. Over 80% of San Francisco was destroyed. 3,000 people were dead. But the American spirit is stubborn. Even as the embers glowed, the rebuilding began. Perhaps the most famous story of resilience came from A.P. Giannini, a small-time banker. Immediately after the quake, realizing the banks would be shut or destroyed, he loaded his bank's gold and cash onto a garbage wagon, covered it with crates of oranges to hide it from looters, and drove it to his home in the suburbs. A few days later, while the big banks were paralyzed, Giannini set up a plank across 2 barrels on the Washington Street wharf. He put a sign up, "Bank of Italia, open for business." He lent money to anyone who wanted to rebuild, often on nothing more than a handshake and a look in their eye. That small bank on the wharf would eventually grow into the Bank of America, becoming one of the largest financial institutions in the world. Conclusion of the first chronicle. The 1906 earthquake wasn't just a tragedy, it was the crucible that forged modern California. It changed how science understood the Earth, leading to the discovery of tectonic plates, changed how cities fought fires, and proved that even when the Earth breaks, the human spirit remains solid. But this was only the beginning of the 20th century for America.